A few weeks ago, I told New York fans not to panic. And guess what? It turns out I was 100% correct. Don't panic.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Now, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, but the best way to get hold of me is right here in the YouTube's comment section, where I read all of the comments and I read all of the complaints, and I repeat, everybody who's puts a comment on there, I read it. I don't read them all out on the show, but I do read them all, even the ones who don't like me. And do you know what? If you don't like me, I don't know what to tell you. I like you. I like you. Not one person on here is someone who I don't like, because you're all welcomed here. You are all welcome here. Everyone's welcomed here. Now, let's talk about the trivia question for a second. Yes, we're going back to doing the trivia question. The question I had was, who was the last manager to manage the All-Star team but not be wearing the uniform of the team they took to the World Series the year before? And we got some great guesses. Let's see. What is it? Scott Campbell. Scott Campbell Canip. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a lot of letters in there. Scott. Trivia answer. There were two. Felipe Alou and Buck Showalter managed the All-Star game in 1995. That is true. Because there was no World Series in 1994, they took the two teams with the best record at the time of the strike the year before. It was the Montreal Expos, who were managed by Felipe Alou, and Buck Showalter, who managed the New York Yankees. That is correct. However, that's not the answer. Felipe Alou, by the way, will come up when I talk about the answer. Miss Fire Blossom says Johnny Keane. This is a tremendously insightful guess. For those of you who don't know, Johnny Keane was the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964. And the World Series that year was the Cardinals versus the New York Yankees. The Yankees were managed by Yogi Berra in his first year as manager. The St. Louis native took the Yankees to the World Series, and they lost Game 7 of the World Series to Johnny Keane's St. Louis Cardinals. And for reasons I will never understand, Ralph Houck, whom my mother loathed, hated, as did my grandfather, was the general manager of the Yankees. For whatever reason, he clashed with Yogi Berra, and they fired Yogi Berra at the end of the 1964 World Series, because what the hell did he ever do? After all those championships as a player, first year as the manager, they get to Game 7 of the World Series. They lose it. They fired Yogi Berra and replaced him with Johnny Keane, the manager of the team that won. And he didn't do particularly well as manager. That is a great guess. Also incorrect. I mean, incorrect. That's yes. But that is true, but it isn't the answer I'm looking for. But guess what? Give it to RIP Baseball to get it correct. Trivia guess is Dusty Baker reached the World Series with the Giants and managed the All-Star game the next year as the manager of the Cubs. That's the correct answer. Dusty managed the Giants, clashed with ownership, his contract was up, and he essentially became a free agent. And he signed with the Chicago Cubs and managed the All-Star team because he was the manager of the National League champs. There you go. The manager, the person who took over the Giants for Dusty Baker was Felipe Alou, who managed the Expos in 1994 and was on the 1995 All-Star team. But that is the correct answer. And by the way, I'm sure there are other instances, but one that I do remember is worth bringing up. In 1981, the Yankees were, for the most part in 1981, were managed by Gene Michael until they came back from the strike, and George Steinbrenner was George Steinbrenner, i.e. he was bananas, and he fired Gene Michael and replaced him with Bob Lemon, who managed the Yankees in 1978 after he had fired Billy Martin. Are you following this? And Bob Lemon was the manager of the Yankees when they lost the 1981 World Series. Well, Lemon returned as manager in 82, and of course would go on, expected to be the manager of the All-Star team. And like a month or so into the season, he was fired and replaced with Gene Michael. And I guess they thought it would not be fair to have Gene Michael be the All-Star game manager. So they did not have him be the All-Star game manager. Bob Lemon was fired, so he wasn't eligible. So which Yankee manager would you have? Would it be Gene Michael? They said no. They took the manager from the team that the Yankees beat in the ALCS, the A's manager. Who was the A's manager? Billy Martin. Billy Martin, who had been fired multiple times by the Yankees, then took over the A's. The A's got all the way to the ALCS. They lost to the Yankees. And Billy Martin was the manager of the AL All-Star team in 1982, despite the fact that the A's did not go on to win the pennant the year before. And there was a matchup of Billy Martin and Tom Lasorda at the All-Star game that year in Montreal. I think it was mainly done so they could have that matchup. At the end of the year, or midway through the year, I guess, George Steinbrenner fired Gene Michael and replaced him with Clyde King. And in 1983, he replaced Clyde King with Billy Martin. And after one season, Billy Martin was replaced by Yogi Berra for 84. And about 2 weeks into the 85 season, Yogi Berra was replaced by Billy Martin. I hope you're getting all this down. New York baseball could have been really confusing back in the 1980s. And I did a whole podcast on this. I might bring it up later. I may bring it up later today when people really pined for the days of George Steinbrenner. Oh, George would not let this happen, forgetting the fact that George was hated by Yankee fans at the time because they felt he was ruining the franchise. And there was a lot of good data to show that he was. And all you got to do is watch those old episodes of Seinfeld of Frank Costanza saying, you don't know what the hell you're doing and all that. And George Costanza doing his rant against Steinbrenner. Yeah, if you wax poetically, oh, if only it was like the days of George. George did a lot to ruin the team. But let me tell you something. The Yankees were in a slide just a week ago. But what a difference a week makes. And for those of you who wanted the Yankees to, blow the team up, remember, 162 games has ebbs and flows. I told Yankee fans to relax and don't panic, and I was right. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. It's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from more than 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need ordered fast and from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com. Now, I did a show on what the hell day did I do it? On June 27th. June 27th, my show title was Don't Panic, New Yorkers. The Mets and Yankees will be fine. Yankee fans were upset by the fact that the team was starting to look like there were cracks in the armor. First place looked a little vulnerable, and Met fans were acting like the team was totally out of it. In fact, my cousin Dave, who is one of the biggest Met fans I know in the world, started sending me gifts of the Titanic sinking. Well, since I recorded that podcast, the Yankees are 5-7, and the Mets are the Yankees are 6-7, and the Mets are an even 500. Now, that's just since I recorded that show, okay? But it doesn't tell the whole story. And the fact that neither team, as of this recording, are in first place, you might think, holy Toledo, maybe it is time to panic. No, it isn't. Let's take the Yankees. Since I did that show, the Yankees did go on a slide. They had the 4-game sweep in Toronto. The Blue Jays just manhandled them. And they had games where they blew the doors off the dump, and they had games where the Yankees just let victory just slip through their fingers. And then they went to play the Metropolitans when both Met teams were about to lock antlers, saying which underachieving team is going to do worse. And the Yankees dropped the first 2 games, and it really looked like the Yankees who had fallen out of first place. There was a larger than zero possibility they could fall out of the playoffs, especially when they were going to that final game, the Max Fried game against the Mets, knowing that a playoff caliber team or team in the playoffs if Seattle was coming up, and then in will come the Cubs. If those teams played up to their level, the Yankees could have stumbled into the All-Star break, barely hang on to a playoff spot. And then came the moment that, as of this recording, looks like it was the turning point of the season. We didn't know it at the time, but it's starting to look like it was. The Mets were behind. Max Fried was pitching. It looked like the gimme game. Okay, the Yankees aren't going to get swept. Sorry to scratch my nose there. The Yankees weren't going to get swept. Max Fried is the Yankees' ace. He pitched too many pitches, and they chipped away and chipped away and chipped away. They were loading the bases, and I thought, and you thought, we all thought, just like we all screamed for ice cream, we all thought the Mets were going to tie the game. And if the Mets tied the game, then it would have been real, the possibility of a sweep by Toronto and a sweep by the Mets, and not that far removed from a sweep by Boston. This would be time for people to panic. And there were actually people on podcasts and on shows and recaps saying maybe it's time for the Yankees to just sell. Fire Boone, sell all the players and everything. Double play, which was scooped out of the dirt by Paul Goldschmidt, stopped a rally from getting out of hand. And then Bellinger made that great play, that shoestring catch, which turned into a double play that ended another rally. Those 2 moments, not a big home run, not a big no-hitter, those 2 moments right now are where the Yankees' momentum shifted the other way. If one of those 2 moments, the Goldschmidt picking the ball out of the dirt or the play by Bellinger, if one of those didn't happen, the Mets tie that game. If the Mets tie that game, they're winning that game. Then all right, the Yankees save face, they don't get swept. But here comes Seattle, and Seattle is good pitching. And we saw they have good pitching because Brian Wu took a no-hitter into the freaking 8th inning. But the Yankees broke up the no-hitter. And then suddenly turned to a ball game when Giancarlo Stanton hit that home run. And next thing you know, Austin Wells ties the game and Aaron Judge wins the game. And suddenly they swept the Seattle Mariners and actually pushed the Mariners out of the playoffs. The Red Sox, of all teams, leapfrogged Seattle. And then came today's game where Rodon pitched like an ace. Rodon, if this is the Rodon that's going to be playing, then the Yankees are in decent shape. If you could have that Rodon and, Max Fried pitching, even with Clark Schmidt injured, boy, oh boy, that means the caliber, sorry, easy for you to say, a pitcher they have to acquire to give them some rotation depth. They don't need to get an ace. They should get an ace because, that'll help. But it's not like Greg Maddux is available right now in his prime. So that happened. And, of course, Bellinger, who made that great play against the Mets, launched 3 home runs and almost hit a 4th. So even though you can say, the Yankees, since I made that recording, are, a game under 500, well, that doesn't tell the whole story. They're on a 5-game winning streak. And despite the sweep by Toronto, and Toronto won again today. Toronto was absolutely on a roll. The Yankees are only 2 games out of first. And it's a true 2 games. 2 games in the win, 2 games in the loss. And Toronto has been playing wonderfully, but they could also go on a losing streak. Do you know why? They're an inconsistent team. I mean, they've won 9 of the last 10, 10 of the last 11. It's ridiculous how much they've won. They are going to come back down to earth, and the Yankees are within striking distance. The worst case scenario right now, if they lose the next 2 games and Toronto wins the next 2 games, they're down by 4 going into the All-Star break. The best case scenario for the Yankees is they go in tied. And that's still on the table. So remember, the ebbs and flows of a season. A season like 1998 for the Yankees, that's just, you remember that team because that's so rare. That team never went on a major slide, except at the beginning of the year. They got off to a bad start. Teams have slumps. Teams have winning points. It's 162 games, New York fans. A lot of people act like they've never followed a baseball season before. The Yankees are a flawed team, but they did a very, very smart thing to fix one of those flaws. And sometimes you have to be heartless. And the Yankees, for all their evil empire reputation and everything, are a sentimental team. And they sometimes have a hard time letting go of players. DJ LeMahieu, you're a good guy. You're a good guy. What about that? They DFA'd him. They realized they're a better team without him. You're better off having Peraza at third and not hitting and move Jazz Chisholm to second. That's exactly what they did. And it was a smart move. And almost instantly, you're seeing the infield has a little more confidence. Volpe has a good defender on either side of him right now. And Peraza is at third. He's not Mike Schmidt. He's not Alex Rodriguez, say it with me, the greatest third baseman in the history of the New York Yankees. Arguably the greatest shortstop in the history of the New York Yankees, but he wasn't allowed to play there. I said it. But there you go. They've upgraded their defense, which now, things don't happen in vacuums. Anthony Volpe, young player, should be hitting his prime, knows that he has a subpar defensive second baseman on one side and Jazz Chisholm playing out of position on the other side. That will do something to you as a defender. If you know you got bad on either side of you, and you saw it was affecting Volpe, that he was making tons of errors. Now you have Jazz Chisholm playing second base where he belongs. And you have Peraza playing third for the time being. The Yankees are inevitably going to make a move, and even if it's just for a replacement level third baseman, that's still an improvement. That's still a step up. And if they have Rodon pitching well, and guess what? Stanton, oh my God, he hasn't hit any home runs yet. Yeah, because he was coming back from an injury. He's starting to look pretty good again. Now, are the Yankees flawless? Of course not. Will the Yankees go on another losing streak? Of course they will. Will there be a moment where Yankee fans panic a little bit? There shouldn't be. Now, the way it's set up right now, if the playoffs were to start today, the Yankees would play the Red Sox. That would be interesting because the Red Sox seem to have their number. However, the Yankees will look significantly different. Don't panic. With everything that went wrong, they're going into the Saturday before the All-Star break 2 games out of first place. With things happening, that sounds like the roof was caving in. They're barely out of first place at this point. So relax, Yankee fans. Now, the other team in New York, I also told them to relax. And while they went on a bad stretch as well, guess what? Things are starting to look like my advice for them and for their fans was correct. All right, let's hear a little bit from our good friends over at Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute you were going to go check something out and try to get those tickets, and without a lot of planning in advance? Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever said, hey, I'm going to go to the ball game with my friends? Maybe it's game day. Say, hey, take a look at that matchup. I'm sure a lot of people did that when it was Mizorowski versus Skeens. But if you don't want to have those tickets prices going into the stratosphere, that's where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, those foamware #1 fingers, maybe even nachos. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I've used it to get tickets for the NLCS in Los Angeles, for spur-of-the-moment Giants tickets, even for a game in Sacramento to see the A's. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price. Do you know what they are? I'll tell you exactly what they are. They're guaranteed. All right, that's all I need to say about that. The Metropolitans, a lot of bad things have happened with them. They did win the series against the Yankees, and obviously there have been ups, there have been downs. And then there was a game like today, where they played the Kansas City Royals, and Met fans who are trying to, dust off any memories from 10 years ago when the Royals made quick work, 5 games and a lot of errors. Next thing you know, the Royals were champs and not the Mets. Well, today, the Mets were losing going into the 8th. The final score of the game was 8-3 Mets over Kansas City. That is a really, really misleading final score. It was 3-1 going into the 8th. And the Mets took the lead on the Vientos bases clearing hit, which gave them a 4-3 lead, and they scored 4 unanswered runs in the 9th inning and wound up taking the 8-3 victory. Meanwhile, the San Diego Padres, it's been weird that they've been an underachieving team. Estrada and company figured out, hey, wait a minute, we're supposed to be pretty good. And Manny Machado homered, and Fernando Tatis got an RBI single, and Jose Iglesias got an RBI double. And then even though that, there's one thing I don't understand is that Kyle Schwarber today hit his 30th home run. It feels like he has 90 home runs because every time I look at a Phillies highlight, he's got another home run. But the Padres doubled up the Phillies. What does that mean? That means with all the bad things, all the losing streaks, all the events around the Mets over these past few weeks, past few months, and all the messages of doom and gloom from my cousin Dave, the Mets are half a game out. They are 1 back in the loss column. There is a greater than 0 chance of them being in first place by themselves. Here's what has to happen. If they can go into the Sunday before the All-Star break, if Montas can win the game against KC, and then who is pitch? And then, okay, Wheeler's pitching for the Padres against Darvish. Okay, obviously you got to give the edge to the Phillies there. So all the Mets have to do is win. Just win, and then the worst case scenario is a half game. Worst case scenario, if everything goes wrong tomorrow, is a game and a half out going into the last Sunday before the All-Star game. The Mets are still a talented team. And with Soto hitting and some of the other things happening, and if Vientos can keep getting a big hit like this, and players can get a big hit like that, the Mets will turn it around, and they've been doing it. They're almost in first place by themselves, and they can be if they win and Philadelphia loses tomorrow. You kind of want to get in first place by the All-Star game, so you kind of have that confidence in whatever. But the fact of the matter is the Mets are still very much into it and are clearly a playoff team. So New York fans, don't go on and say, oh, I think they need to, like, the Yankees need to sell or the Mets need to give up. The Dodgers are vulnerable. If you don't believe me, right now, the Dodgers are on a 7-game losing streak. Now, I was watching the Dodger game with my mother today, the Dodger Giants game today with my mom, and I said, yeah, the Dodgers are on a big losing streak. And she said, man, how far have they fallen? Are they in second or third place? No. They have even with that big losing streak, they currently have the best record in the National League. Even with a 7-game losing streak, they have the best record in the National League. But they're vulnerable. Their pitching is vulnerable, and they can certainly lose. And they could lose to the New York Mets. And as for the American League, look, Detroit has the best record in the American League. And we see many times teams that have the best record in the regular season have a bad week, and then boom, 2000 White Sox, 2001 Houston Astros had the best record in the National League. All right. Both the Yankees and the A's in 2002 were the best teams in the American League. And so naturally the ALCS was Minnesota versus the Angels. It can happen. Remember when the ALCS a few years ago was Philadelphia versus San Diego? When it looked like the Dodgers and the Braves were on a headlong collision to meet again in the National League Championship Series? Remember when the 2019 Dodgers looked like, okay, folks, we're going to make it 3 pennants in a row, and this time we're going to win it. And if Will Smith's drive to right center field dropped, they would have beaten the Nationals and probably gone on to the World Series with that 100-some-odd win team. Nope, it was Washington. So the Dodgers are vulnerable. They're still very good, but they're vulnerable. Clearly the Cubs are vulnerable. They had the doors blown off the dump today. Clearly the Phillies are vulnerable. They just lost to the Padres. So if you're the Mets, punch your ticket in and take your chances. As for the Yankees, there is no super team in the American League. The Yankees could lose the division, the wild card series 2-0 and out, or they can win the pennant. 162 games has a lot of ebbs and a lot of flows. Do yourself a favor, Yankee fans, Met fans. Remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. 42 is the answer to the most important question in the world, and don't panic. We know 42 means something in baseball. Can't wear that on the uniform anymore. Don't panic. So, by the way, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. And you can also find us here on the YouTubes. And thanks so much for making us at Locked On MLB your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night here on the Locked On MLB feed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Oh, I forgot to ask the trivia question. We do have a new trivia question, and we have the answer on the Sunday show. We'll be doing a Sunday show, and then a show that's going to drop Monday morning with Booney, the host of Locked On A's. We're going to talk a little bit about that situation. But here is the new trivia question. Let's see if we get who was the last All-Star game starting pitcher who would go on to throw the final World Series clinching pitch that same year. This pitcher started the All-Star game, and then that same year was on the mound throwing the final pitch to clinch the World Series. That's the trivia question. Who was the last one to do that? Put your answers right here in the YouTube comments below. Talking about the Yankees and Mets and telling their fans don't panic. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.